Sometimes the smallest guard is the loudest warning. Ghost, a white German shepherd, stands motionless outside the ICU door, his paws planted firmly on the polished linoleum floor, amber eyes locked on the faint glow of the monitor lights. The hospital is quiet, except for the occasional hum of ventilators and the soft beep of a heart monitor that seems louder in the empty corridor. The fluorescent lights flicker intermittently, casting long, shifting shadows across the walls, making the white coat of Ghost glow almost ethereal against the sterile green tiles. Outside, a faint drizzle taps against the windows, each droplet creating a rhythm that echoes like a heartbeat. But inside, the air smells sharp with antiseptic and the faint, metallic tang of medicine. Every so often, the sliding doors hiss open and footsteps creep along the hallway. But Ghost does not move, his stance unwavering, ears pointed, tail low but tense, every muscle coiled with awareness. Staff Sergeant Elias Brooks lies in bed, covered in a thin blanket, eyes closed, chest rising and falling with mechanical precision as the ventilator assists his breathing. His dark skin is pale under the hospital lights, and the shadows highlight the sharp lines of his jaw, the short-cropped hair sticking slightly at odd angles. His dog tags glint softly against the fabric of his uniform shirt beneath the blanket. Ghost's nose twitches as he scents the air, catching the subtle hints of antiseptic and the faint, almost imperceptible scent of the person who just entered the room, a young nurse adjusting the four-stand with careful hands. Ghost growls softly, a deep, vibrating sound that is almost imperceptible, his lips barely curling, a warning that halts the nurse mid-step. She hesitates, unsure, her eyes flicking to the dog, whose gaze is unwavering, fixed on a small duffel bag at the foot of Elias's bed. The bag is ordinary to anyone else, just a military-issue canvas case, but to Ghost, it carries the weight of importance, a secret he must guard. Each time someone approaches it, he steps forward, body low, hackles raised just enough to signal vigilance without aggression. The corridor outside feels longer than it should, the faint echo of distant footsteps amplified by the sterile walls. Ghost shifts slightly, pads silent, eyes never leaving the bag, nostrils flaring as he inhales the mingled scents of the room. Elias, the nurse, antiseptic, and something else, something unfamiliar yet threatening in its subtlety. The air is thick, the faint buzz of overhead lights harmonizing with the low mechanical hum of the ventilator, creating a tense rhythm that Ghost seems to follow instinctively. The nurse takes a tentative step back, realizing the dog is not acting out of fear or playfulness but purpose, a silent sentinel in the dimly lit room. Ghost's ears flick as if responding to some distant cue, perhaps the faintest movement of Elias beneath the blanket, a sigh, a shifting of limbs, and the dog adjusts his stance, placing himself squarely between the bed and the doorway. The atmosphere is heavy with anticipation, each second stretched thin, the smell of antiseptic mingling with the faint warmth of Ghost's coat, a reassuring presence in the cold sterility of the ICU. Outside, the rain continues its soft percussion, and the occasional passing of a cart down the hallway sends faint echoes that make Ghost's ears twitch, tail tip brushing against the floor ever so slightly. Despite the stillness, he is aware of every sound, every shift of light, every subtle movement, reading the room with the patience of years spent alongside Elias in unpredictable situations where instinct and trust were the only guides. The faint beep of the monitor accelerates slightly, and Ghost's eyes snap to it, then back to the bag, alert to the subtlest change, a sentinel between the unknown and the fragile life he has vowed to protect. Time seems suspended in the room, only punctuated by Ghost's quiet growls, the ventilator's steady rhythm, and the distant murmur of hospital life beyond the doors, a careful balance of tension and calm, until the next step, the next scent, the next subtle shift, can signal whether the moment remains still or demands action. Yet Ghost does not move, only watches, the embodiment of vigilance and quiet devotion. The morning light filters through the blinds, creating thin stripes of pale gold across the polished floor of the hospital corridor. Ghost shifts slightly, ears flicking as the faint hum of a rolling cart passes by, wheels squeaking softly against the linoleum. The duffel bag at the foot of the bed sits quiet, its canvas surface smooth, unassuming, yet the dog senses every subtle vibration, every faint scent that hints at significance beyond its appearance. Elias Brooks remains still beneath the blanket, the rise and fall of his chest measured, aided by the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator. The air carries a faint chill, tinged with antiseptic and the subtle warmth of human presence, a combination that Ghost reads instinctively, positioning his body carefully between the bed and the door. Dr. Anna Harper moves with precise efficiency, adjusting the monitors, checking the tubing, but every motion is tracked by the attentive amber eyes of Ghost. A quiet alarm signals a minor fluctuation in the room, and Ghost tilts his head, nostrils flaring, ears moving independently, catching the microscopic change, an instinct sharpened by years of partnership with Elias. The nurse steps forward to check the four, and Ghost lifts a low, deliberate growl, the sound almost inaudible but weighted with meaning, a warning that halts her hand midair. He steps closer to the bag, tail held low but rigid, eyes scanning every shadow for movement that might threaten what he has silently vowed to protect. Outside, the drizzle continues, soft but persistent, and the windows collect a fine layer of moisture that glimmers in the morning light, creating a haze that makes the room feel isolated from the rest of the world. Ghost shifts his weight, pads silent, muscles tense, every fiber of his being alert, reading the subtle cues of the environment, the shifting of light across the walls, the scent of the new doctor as she approaches, the faint metallic tang of the air stirred by human breath. Elias stirs slightly, and Ghost immediately notices the change, positioning his body so that he is both a barrier and a sentinel, ready to respond to the slightest indication of threat or disturbance. The soft clatter of a tray being set down. Outside, the room echoes faintly, and Ghost's ears twitch, eyes narrowing, following the subtle vibrations that travel through the floor. He lifts his paw slightly, then settles it again, a deliberate pause, a communication in the language of vigilance, telling all present that he is watching, assessing, and ready to act if necessary. Dr. Harper glances at Ghost with a mixture of curiosity and caution, her movements slow, deliberate, ensuring that she does not provoke the dog unnecessarily. The soft ticking of a wall clock merges with the faint mechanical hum of the ventilator, creating a rhythm that Ghost seems to move in time with, adjusting his stance with subtle precision. The duffel bag, innocuous to anyone else, is the focal point of his attention, and any approach toward it is met with a careful, measured response, a growl or a slight shift in position, communicating silently but unequivocally that this item is under his protection. Elias shifts again, more noticeably this time, and Ghost's head lifts, eyes bright, reading the subtle signs of consciousness returning, muscles coiled, ready to move, ready to guide or defend without hesitation. The nurse, recognizing the intensity of his focus, steps back, her hands folded, understanding that this is not simple canine behavior, but a complex display of awareness, training, and loyalty. Outside, the rain eases slightly, the soft patter creating a calming background noise, yet within the room, tension holds, each second stretched as Ghost monitors, assesses, and responds in silence. Every flicker of movement, every breath, every scent is cataloged in his perception, each informing his decision of how to maintain vigilance and ensure that nothing compromises the patient, the bag, or the fragile balance of the morning. Ghost shifts once more, head tilting, ears moving independently, capturing minute changes, nostrils flaring at the subtle alterations in airflow, the faintest sound of fabric brushing against the linoleum. His tail moves slightly, not in play, but in calibration, balancing his stance, reinforcing his readiness, his silent communication to all who enter this space, this moment, this person, and the object at the foot of the bed are under his protection. The soft hum of distant voices in the corridor does not distract him. He acknowledges them with subtle adjustments of posture, yet his gaze never wavers from the bed and the bag, a combination of vigilance and intuition that marks him as both companion and guardian. Elias shifts again, eyes fluttering, and Ghost responds instantly, leaning closer to the bed, nose low, ears forward, a silent message of support and readiness. The morning continues, quiet yet charged with the invisible tension of anticipation. Ghost a steadfast sentinel, unblinking, unwavering, every movement purposeful, every breath deliberate, attuned to the rhythm of life he is sworn to watch over. A white guardian in the green-lit room, vigilant, patient, and wholly devoted to the task that only he fully understands. Dr. Anna Harper does not reach for the duffel bag again. She stands beside Elias Brooks with one hand resting lightly on the edge of the bed rail, watching the white German shepherd as if she has suddenly realized there is another kind of chart in the room, one written in breath, scent, silence, and instinct. Ghost keeps his body angled toward the door, but his eyes return again and again to Elias, then to the canvas bag, then back to the narrow strip of hallway beyond the glass. The pattern is too careful to ignore. Dr. Harper has worked in hospitals long enough to know the difference between panic and purpose. Panic scatters. Purpose points. Ghost is pointing without moving. A few feet away, Nurse Denise Johnson lowers her voice and says, "Doctor, security is asking if we still want the dog removed." Dr. Harper looks at the steady monitor, the pale morning light, the damp paw prints Ghost has left near the bed, and something in her expression softens. "Not yet," she says. "He is trying to tell us something." Nurse Johnson looks toward the dog, then toward Elias, whose eyelids flicker beneath the dim hospital light. For one quiet second, the room seems to hold its breath. Then Ghost lifts his head sharply, not toward the bed, toward the hallway. His ears stand high, white fur rising along the back of his neck, not in wild fear, but in recognition. The elevator at the end of the corridor opens with a soft bell. Footsteps follow, slow, polished, too measured for the hour. Ghost steps forward until his front paws cross the threshold of the room, blocking the open space like a living door. Dr. Harper turns just as a man in a charcoal overcoat appears beyond the glass wall, holding a leather folder against his chest. He is clean-cut, middle-aged, with silver at his temples and a visitor badge clipped neatly to his lapel. He smiles in the practiced way of someone used to being allowed into rooms. "Good morning," he says, voice low and smooth. "I am here from Base Legal. I need to collect Staff Sergeant Brooks's personal effects for inventory." Nurse Johnson glances at the clock. "It is just after 7 in the morning. We were not told anyone was coming," she says. The man offers a small, patient smile. "It was a late request. Sensitive matter." The words drift into the room, calm as dust. Ghost gives one low bark. Not loud, not frantic, just one sound, clean and final, echoing off the tiled walls. Elias's fingers move against the blanket. Barely. Dr. Harper sees it. Ghost sees it first. The dog turns his head for half a second, eyes bright, then looks back at the man in the hallway. The man's smile fades just enough to reveal impatience beneath it. "That animal should not be in an intensive care unit," he says. "He is interfering with procedure." Dr. Harper steps into the doorway, keeping her voice even. "The patient is not stable enough for personal items to be removed." "Doctor, I have authorization." He lifts the folder, but Ghost does not look at the paper. He looks at the man's shoes, then at his hands. Then he lowers his nose toward the air and inhales. A small sound comes from deep in his chest, the kind of sound that makes even busy people stop pretending they are not afraid. Nurse Johnson notices the way the man's right hand tightens around the folder. She also notices that his visitor badge is clipped upside down. A tiny thing. Almost nothing. But hospitals run on tiny things. Dosages. Timelines. Names. Details that save lives when people are tired. Dr. Harper reaches for the wall phone. "I am going to verify this with administration." The man's eyes shift to the duffel bag. Only once. Fast. But Ghost catches it. The dog moves instantly, gliding backward to the foot of the bed, planting himself beside the bag, his white body blocking it completely. Elias's lips part. No words come out. Only a faint breath, dry and fragile. Dr. Harper turns toward him. "Staff Sergeant Brooks?" The monitor beeps a little faster. Ghost lowers his head near Elias's hand, not touching, just close enough for the man to feel warmth. Elias's fingers curl weakly, searching. They find Ghost's fur. The dog closes his eyes for 1 second, receiving the touch like a prayer answered, then opens them again and stares at the man in the overcoat. In that moment, the room changes. It is no longer only a hospital room. It is a post, a watch, A line held in silence. Dr. Harper asks the man for his name. He answers too quickly. Martin Hale. Nurse Johnson looks down at the visitor log on her tablet. Her face tightens. There is no Martin Hale listed. Not from base legal. Not from anywhere. Outside the window, the rain finally stops, leaving the glass streaked and silver under the early sun. Ghost presses one paw against the duffel bag, as if sealing a promise. Dr. Harper keeps the phone to her ear, waiting for security, but her eyes stay on Elias, whose hand now grips a small fold of Ghost's fur with all the strength he has left. The man in the hallway takes half a step back. Ghost does not chase him. He does not need to. The warning has already done its work. The truth has begun to breathe. Security arrives without sirens, without rushing feet, without the kind of noise that makes a hospital forget it is a place of healing. Two officers in Navy uniforms step from the elevator with calm faces and careful hands, speaking softly into their radios, as if even suspicion must lower its voice near the sick. The man calling himself Martin Hale does not argue. He does not run. He only lifts his palms slightly, that polite smile returning in pieces, thin and practiced, while Ghost watches from beside the bed with one white paw still pressed against the duffel bag. Dr. Anna Harper keeps her place at the doorway, her badge clipped straight, her shoulders still, but her eyes are alert now in a way they were not an hour earlier. Nurse Denise Johnson stands behind her with the tablet held close to her chest, the visitor log glowing blue against her fingers. There is no appointment from base legal, she says quietly. One of the officers nods and asks the man for identification. He reaches into his coat slowly and hands over a card. The officer studies it, then studies him. The hallway seems to narrow around that silence. Inside the room, Elias Brooks breathes through the machine, his hand still tangled weakly in Ghost's fur. It is not a grip anymore. It is a tether. Ghost turns his head and nudges the Marine's wrist with the gentlest pressure, as if reminding him to stay anchored to the world. Elias's eyelids tremble again. A faint crease forms between his brows. Somewhere beneath the medicine, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the long, dark water of unconsciousness, he hears the dog. Dr. Harper sees the change and steps back to the bedside. Elias, she says softly, using his first name now, not his rank, because some moments need less formality and more mercy. You are safe. Ghost is here. The name moves through the room like warmth under a door. Ghost lifts his ears but does not leave the bag. The officer in the hallway asks the visitor another question. The man answers, but his voice has lost its smooth edge. It sounds dry, smaller. Nurse Johnson glances toward the duffel bag and whispers, "Doctor, what is in there?" Dr. Harper does not answer at once. She looks at Ghost, at the way he guards it, not possessively, not fearfully, but with the solemn duty of a Marine holding a line no one ordered him to hold. Something Staff Sergeant Brooks did not want taken, she says. The words settle heavily. With security present, Dr. Harper asks for permission to inspect the bag as part of patient safety protocol. Elias cannot give a full answer, but when she touches the zipper, Ghost does something no one expects. He does not growl. He steps aside. Only 2 inches. Enough. His eyes remain fixed on her face, reading not her hands, but her heart. She understands then. He was never protecting the bag from everyone. He was protecting it until the right person finally listened. The zipper makes a soft rasp in the quiet room. Inside are the ordinary fragments of a life interrupted, folded fatigues, a worn devotional card, a pair of clean socks, a black notebook with watermarks along the edge, and Elias's field jacket smelling faintly of rain, smoke, and cold morning air. Beneath the jacket, wrapped in a small towel, is a plastic evidence sleeve. Dr. Harper pauses. Nurse Johnson leans closer. Inside the sleeve is a hospital wristband, tiny, pale blue, sized for an infant. Beside it is a flash drive taped to the back of an old military challenge coin. No one speaks. The monitor continues its steady rhythm. Ghost lowers his head and lets out a quiet breath through his nose. Dr. Harper feels the room change again, not with fear this time, but with gravity. Why would he have this? Nurse Johnson whispers. At the sound of her voice, Elias moves. His lips part, and for a moment there is only air. Dr. Harper leans close. Do not force it, she says. Elias swallows. His voice comes out rough, nearly broken by dryness, but clear enough to cut through every machine in the room. Baby ward. Ghost stands. His ears rise. His eyes burn bright under the cold light. Dr. Harper looks at Nurse Johnson. What baby ward? Nurse Johnson's face drains of color. The East Wing nursery is closed for renovation. They moved 3 newborns to temporary observation last night. Elias's fingers tighten once in Ghost's fur. Not safe, he whispers. The man in the hallway hears it. For the first time, his face truly changes. Not anger. Not panic. Exposure. The kind of expression a lie wears when daylight reaches it. One security officer gently guides him farther from the doorway while the other calls hospital administration. Dr. Harper takes the flash drive without plugging it in, placing it safely into a new evidence bag, then turns to Nurse Johnson. Check the temporary nursery. Now, take security with you. Nurse Johnson nods and moves quickly, her shoes whispering against the floor. Ghost takes one step toward the door, then stops, and looks back at Elias. It is a question only the two of them understand. Elias's eyes open the smallest fraction, dark and tired, but alive. His lips move again. Go. The word is barely more than breath. But Ghost hears it like a command given under a wide sky. He lowers his nose once to Elias's hand, then turns toward the hallway, white coat catching the morning light as he moves. He does not bark. He does not hurry wildly. He walks with purpose, past the officers, past the stunned nurses, toward the East Wing where the air grows warmer and the halls smell faintly of powder, clean blankets, and something that does not belong there. Behind him, Dr. Harper watches with her hand over the evidence bag and a silent prayer pressing against her ribs. The dog had guarded the truth long enough. Now he was going to lead them to what it was meant to save. Ghost moves through the hospital corridor with measured steps, white coat glistening faintly under the overhead fluorescent lights. Paws silent against the polished floor, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow, every small detail the human eye might overlook. Nurse Denise Johnson walks alongside, whispering directions and updates into her radio, while Dr. Anna Harper follows with careful, deliberate movements, clutching the evidence bag to her chest. The corridor is quiet except for the distant hum of air conditioning and the soft swish of Ghost's tail brushing the tiles. As they reach the temporary nursery, the door is slightly ajar, a faint glow spilling into the hallway, revealing the soft outlines of cribs covered with pastel blankets, the air smelling faintly of baby powder and the antiseptic that lingers throughout the hospital. Ghost pauses just outside, nose lifting to the scent of clean linens, warmth, and the unmistakable tang of a newborn. He steps carefully inside, ears pointed, eyes bright, scanning each small figure with intent and purpose. Dr. Harper steps beside him, lowering her voice so as not to startle anyone, and Nurse Johnson carefully closes the door behind them, leaving only the soft glow of the nursery lights. Ghost moves from crib to crib with a quiet deliberation, sniffing the edges of the blankets, tilting his head, eyes narrowing, as though reading invisible signs left by the fragile occupants. He stops at one crib, white fur pressing lightly against the floorboards, amber eyes focused, tail low but still, posture tense with a gentle authority. Inside the crib, a tiny bundle shifts, soft breaths audible in the quiet room, eyes closed, small hands curled. Ghost rests his head briefly against the crib rail, careful not to disturb, then steps back and lays one paw softly on the floor, creating a silent connection. Dr. Harper kneels beside the crib, speaking softly, explaining her presence and intentions, while Ghost tilts his head as if listening, understanding, approving. The infant stirs slightly, a small whimper, and Ghost moves just enough to place himself as a protective barrier between the baby and the door, scanning the hallway for any interruption. Outside, the light has begun to change, morning sunlight diffusing through the hospital windows, casting soft stripes along the walls and floor, touching Ghost's coat in glimmers of gold. Nurse Johnson adjusts the baby monitor, but Ghost remains undistracted, his attention fixed entirely on the crib and the subtle movement within, as if he alone can sense the delicate rhythms of life. The soft whir of the monitor, the faint squeak of the rocking crib, the distant beep of equipment all blend into a symphony that Ghost seems to navigate effortlessly, adjusting stance, shifting weight, ears twitching at each nuance. Dr. Harper looks at him with a mixture of awe and quiet respect, realizing that this is not mere canine behavior, but an instinctive guardianship born of loyalty, experience, and deep bond. Ghost steps slightly forward, nose hovering over the edge of the crib, then retreats a few inches, testing, assessing, communicating in silence. Elias Brooks stirs weakly back in his room, his fingers curling around the blanket, a faint breath escaping as if in acknowledgement of the dog's actions. Ghost glances briefly toward the closed door to the corridor, ensuring the path remains clear, then returns his gaze to the infant, eyes tracking every subtle motion, every faint rise and fall of the tiny chest. The light in the room reflects off the white fur, giving Ghost an almost spectral presence, a silent guardian, vigilant, patient, entirely devoted. Dr. Harper finally breathes out slowly, lowering her hands from the evidence bag, her voice quiet but firm. Everything seems in order. He knew exactly where to go. Ghost lifts his head, nostrils flaring gently, then nudges the baby blanket with the tip of his nose, a soft, deliberate movement, as if confirming safety and presence. The infant sighs softly in response, unaware of the guardian watching over them, yet the room itself feels steadier, warmer, held in a quiet protective rhythm established by the dog. Nurse Johnson glances at Dr. Harper, who nods imperceptibly, eyes locked on Ghost, witnessing the unfolding connection between canine and human responsibility. Ghost steps back to the center of the room, placing himself strategically near the door, but his gaze never leaves the crib, amber eyes alert to any subtle threat, any unexpected movement. The soft hum of ventilation, the distant sounds of hospital life, the faint patter of morning rain now ceased, create an ambient stillness in which the bond between the dog, the baby, and the unseen threads connecting them feels tangible, a quiet miracle born of patience, awareness, and unwavering loyalty. Ghost lowers his head slightly, ears relaxed just enough to signal calm, but ready to respond, every muscle coiled with attentiveness, embodying the still, silent authority that marks a guardian who has understood the importance of his charge and chosen to stand vigilant until safety is assured. Dr. Harper exhales, a gentle smile touching her face as she observes the scene, recognizing that Ghost's presence alone brings a weight of reassurance that words could not convey, and the tiny room, bathed in soft light, holds a newfound serenity as the white K9 remains steadfast, sentinel of life, protector of innocence, the embodiment of devotion realized in motion and silence. The temporary nursery remains quiet, but quiet no longer feels safe. It feels watchful. Ghost stands between the door and the crib, his white body still as carved stone, ears turned toward the hallway where voices rise and fall behind closed glass. Nurse Denise Johnson finishes checking the monitor beside the newborn, then glances at Dr. Anna Harper with the face of a woman trying not to show fear in a room built for fragile beginnings. "Doctor," she whispers, "this baby was not supposed to be here." Dr. Harper looks down at the chart clipped to the rolling bassinet. The name line is incomplete. The wristband number does not match the file on the tablet. It is a small mismatch, only a few digits out of place, the kind of thing a tired staff member might blame on a long shift. But Ghost lowers his nose to the bassinet wheel and gives a soft, unhappy breath. Dr. Harper feels the truth settle over her slowly. This is not a mistake. It is a trail. She looks back toward the hallway, where one security officer stands near the entrance, speaking quietly into his radio. "Lock this wing down gently," she says. "No alarms. No panic. Just no one in or out until administration confirms every record." The officer nods. Ghost watches him for half a second, then returns his gaze to the baby, who sleeps beneath a pale blue blanket no larger than a folded bath towel. The child's fingers open and close in the air, reaching for nothing, trusting everything. That is what makes the room ache. Trust has no armor. Trust comes into the world small, warm, and helpless, believing hands will be kind. Ghost steps closer to the bassinet and rests his chin lightly against the metal rail. The baby sighs. Dr. Harper's throat tightens. She has treated soldiers, children, old men who apologized for needing help, mothers who held themselves together with a smile and a prayer, but this moment feels different. This moment has the strange holiness of a warning answered before it becomes tragedy. Her phone vibrates. The screen shows a message from hospital administration. She reads it once. Then again. Her face goes pale. The East Wing renovation was approved, she says quietly. But no newborn transfers were scheduled for last night. Nurse Johnson turns toward the bassinet. Then who moved them? No one answers. Ghost does. He lifts his head sharply and looks toward a supply closet at the far end of the nursery. The door is closed. Plain white. A mop bucket sits outside it, dry and unused. Dr. Harper follows his stare. Ghost. The dog does not bark. He walks toward the closet with slow certainty, each step soft, deliberate, impossible to dismiss. He stops 3 feet away and sits. Not a sign of fear. A signal. Nurse Johnson whispers. He is alerting again. The security officer moves beside Dr. Harper, careful and calm, and opens the closet door. Inside are stacked linens, sealed packages of diapers, a portable warmer, and a small hospital tote tucked behind a box of blankets. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. But Ghost noses the air, then looks directly at the tote. Dr. Harper puts on gloves before lifting it out. Inside are 3 printed wristbands, 2 empty medication labels, and a folded discharge form already signed with a name no one recognizes. The room goes colder. Nurse Johnson covers her mouth, not from shock alone, but from the terrible understanding that paperwork can become a doorway when the wrong person holds a pen. Dr. Harper closes the tote and hands it to security. Evidence, she says, her voice steady because someone has to be steady. Then her eyes return to Ghost. You knew? Ghost blinks once, as if the answer is too simple for words. Of course he knew. He had followed scent where people followed procedure. He had trusted the tremor in the air where people trusted badges and forms. Back in the intensive care room, Elias Brooks opens his eyes fully for the first time. The light hurts, and the world comes back in pieces. Ceiling tile, plastic tubing, the taste of dryness, the distant rhythm of a monitor, the absence of Ghost at his side. Panic tries to rise, but Dr. Harper's earlier words return through the fog. Ghost is here. No, Ghost is working. Elias turns his head a fraction and sees Captain Raymond Carter standing near the bed now, a tall black Marine officer with silver in his close-cropped hair and worry held tightly behind discipline. Easy, Staff Sergeant, Carter says, leaning closer. Your dog found the nursery. Elias's eyes fill before he can stop them. Not with fear, with recognition, with the terrible relief of a man whose last conscious hope has not been wasted. The baby, Elias rasps. Captain Carter nods. Safe. That one word nearly breaks him. Elias closes his eyes, and one tear slips sideways into his temple. He remembers rain on the loading dock the night before. A young mother trembling near the ambulance entrance. A nurse begging him not to ask questions too loudly. A tiny wristband pressed into his palm. Ghost whining once, low and urgent, because he smelled fear before Elias understood it. He remembers promising, I will keep this safe. Then everything after that had become sirens, light, and darkness. Now, in the temporary nursery, Ghost stands over the proof of that promise, his white coat bright beneath the soft ceiling lamps. Dr. Harper looks from the sleeping child to the sealed evidence bag in her hand and realizes the story is larger than one patient, one dog, one strange visitor in an overcoat. It is about a chain of small mercies, each one almost missed. A nurse who hesitated. A doctor who listened. A Marine who held on long enough to whisper 2 words. And a dog who refused to let silence bury the truth. Ghost turns toward the door again. His ears lift. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rings once, then stops. The baby sleeps on, unaware that the world around them has shifted. Dr. Harper places one hand lightly on the bassinet and speaks under her breath, not to anyone in particular. Hold the line a little longer. Ghost steps forward, calm and ready, as if he has understood that all his life has trained him for this hallway, this morning, this child, and the unfinished promise waiting to be brought back to the man who made it. Ghost pauses in the nursery doorway, ears angled toward the distant hum of the hospital, nostrils flaring as he senses subtle vibrations in the air. The infant stirs slightly, tiny hands curling into delicate fists beneath the pale blue blanket, and Ghost shifts his weight, lowering his head near the bassinet rail. careful not to disturb the fragile chest rising and falling with rhythmic precision. Dr. Anna Harper kneels nearby, her eyes tracing the pattern of Ghost's movements, understanding that every deliberate step, every faint breath, and every subtle twitch of the tail is a language she has only just begun to comprehend. Nurse Denise Johnson stands silently to the side, tablet in hand, observing the interplay between dog and infant, feeling a tension in the room that is both delicate and profound, like the edge of a held breath that could either release in relief or tighten with anticipation. Outside the nursery, the corridor remains still. The soft hum of ventilation mingles with the distant echo of wheels across linoleum floors, punctuating the quiet with intermittent mechanical notes. Ghost moves carefully along the bassinet, his amber eyes never leaving the infant, nose low, tail held in measured balance, sensing the weight of unseen forces in the room. Dr. Harper watches as the white German shepherd pauses at each crib, sniffing subtly, tilting his head, communicating without sound, conveying that the right decision will be guided by instinct as much as by observation. The baby's breathing deepens slightly, a soft sigh breaking the stillness, and Ghost responds with a gentle lowering of his chest to the floor, exhaling softly, as if offering a silent affirmation of safety. Nurse Johnson whispers softly, "He knows. He always knows," and Dr. Harper nods, feeling the truth in the words resonate beyond procedure, beyond the sterile rules of the hospital, into something that belongs to instinct, devotion, and the unspoken bond forged between human and companion. Ghost steps back from the bassinet, just enough to allow a clear view of the infant, while keeping himself between the crib and the door, an unyielding sentinel whose presence commands attention and respect without any word spoken. Elias Brooks stirs faintly in his bed, fingers curling around the thin blanket, eyes fluttering open to the pale morning light filtering through the blinds, catching the glimmer of Ghost's coat at the far end of the corridor, and the faint connection is made. A subtle recognition that the mission has not been interrupted, that the guardianship continues even as consciousness returns. Dr. Harper speaks in low tones, confirming that the infant's vitals are steady, but her words are a background hum compared to the profound language of the dog. Ghost lifts his head slightly, nostrils quivering, eyes narrowing just enough to communicate vigilance, then tilts toward the direction of the exit, signaling movement, a readiness to lead the way for the next steps that will ensure safety. Nurse Johnson adjusts the bassinet slightly, her hands light, careful not to disturb the infant, and in response, Ghost lowers his head again, eyes softening in a silent approval, chest rising and falling with the faintest rumble of contentment and reassurance. The soft glow of the nursery lights reflects in the amber of his eyes, creating an aura of calm determination that fills the room with a quiet authority. Dr. Harper breathes slowly, letting herself absorb the significance of this moment, the interplay of awareness, instinct, and the protective devotion of a being who has devoted his senses to safeguarding life, understanding the gravity of each second, each subtle motion, each nuanced interaction in the space. The corridor outside remains empty. Sunlight continues to diffuse across the pale green walls, the sound of distant footsteps soft and unobtrusive, while Ghost remains steadfast, a white figure poised with quiet readiness, tail gently brushing the floor, muscles relaxed but prepared, eyes bright and scanning, a guardian whose watchfulness is measured, deliberate, and entirely devoted to the fragile life in his care and the man whose hand rests lightly in trust upon him. Every movement is precise, every breath intentional, every glance a silent communication between the world of instinct and the world of human concern, forming a cocoon of vigilance, patience, and protection that carries the weight of responsibility with grace and quiet dignity, marking the space with a sense of safety that is tangible even to those who cannot articulate the depth of understanding that binds them all together. Captain Raymond Carter reaches the nursery with 2 members of hospital security and stops before he crosses the doorway, because even after 26 years in uniform, he knows some rooms ask for reverence before authority. The temporary nursery is washed in soft morning light, all pale green walls and clean white sheets, all the fragile sounds of new life breathing through the machines. Ghost stands near the closest bassinet, still and bright, his white coat catching the sun like snow on a quiet field. Dr. Anna Harper looks up from the chart in her hands, tired but steady. Nurse Denise Johnson stands beside her, holding the corrected records that now prove what instinct had known before paper could admit it. "Captain," Dr. Harper says softly, "the baby is safe. The records were altered, but we caught it before discharge." Captain Carter looks at the sleeping infant, then at Ghost, and the hard line of his face loosens. "That dog just saved more than one life today," he murmurs. Ghost does not respond to the praise. His ears move once toward the hallway. His attention is already somewhere else, pulled by a thread no one else can feel. Back in the intensive care room, Elias Brooks is awake enough to know absence. His throat is dry, his body weak, and every sound arrives through a fog, but one thing is clear. Ghost is not beside him. That should make him afraid. Instead, it brings a strange peace. It means the dog found the place where the promise needed him most. Elias turns his head toward the doorway, where the pale strip of hall light falls across the floor. He remembers the loading dock in pieces now. Rain on asphalt. The sharp smell of wet concrete. A young mother named Marissa Cole standing under the awning with a hospital blanket around her shoulders, holding nothing in her arms because someone had already taken her newborn for observation. Her voice had trembled, but her eyes had held a desperate kind of courage. "They said it was routine," she had whispered. "But the nurse told me to find someone in uniform. Someone honest." Elias had been off duty, waiting for a ride back to base after a community outreach event, his service jacket damp, Ghost sitting calmly beside his left leg. He had no reason to be part of it. No order. No assignment. Just a woman with shaking hands and a baby wristband pressed into his palm like the last match in a dark room. Ghost had whined once and looked toward the east. Wing entrance. Elias had trusted that sound more than any explanation. Now, lying beneath hospital lights, Elias understands why Ghost stayed with the bag. The wristband. The flash drive. The coin. A chain of truth small enough to fit in a pocket, heavy enough to hold down a lie. In the nursery, Dr. Harper connects the flash drive to a secure hospital computer under the watch of security and administration. No one speaks while the files load. The room grows still, except for the soft breathing of the newborn and the low hum of the monitor. The files are not dramatic at first. Schedules, transfer forms, names, times. Then a pattern appears. 3 temporary transfers requested under a department code no longer in use. A discharge route marked for a side exit. A false legal pickup authorization under the same name the visitor used earlier. Martin Hale was not a lawyer. He was a mask made of paperwork. Nurse Johnson presses a hand to her chest. They were going to move the baby out before anyone noticed. Dr. Harper's face tightens, not with anger loud enough to spill, but with the kind that becomes action. Not anymore. Captain Carter steps closer to Ghost and lowers himself to one knee. Careful, respectful, giving the dog the choice to come near. "You held the line, Marine," he says quietly. Ghost looks at him, then turns his head toward the intensive care wing. The meaning is clear. Not finished. Captain Carter rises. "Take him back to Brooks." Ghost starts walking before anyone clips a leash to his collar. He moves down the corridor with calm purpose, passing nurses who step aside without being asked, passing a janitor who stops with one hand on his mop handle, passing a young doctor who watches the white shepherd like he is seeing a prayer with pause. The hospital feels different now. Less cold. More awake. In the intensive care room, Elias hears the soft rhythm of pause before he sees him. His eyes turn toward the door. Ghost appears in the opening, framed by morning light, ears high, eyes fixed on the man in the bed. For the first time all morning, the dog's body softens. Not completely. A guardian never forgets the doorway. But enough. Enough to become a companion again. Elias's lips tremble into the smallest smile. "You found her," he whispers. Ghost crosses the room and rests his head beside Elias's hand. The Marine moves his fingers slowly, weakly, until they sink into the thick white fur between Ghost's ears. For a moment, no machine matters. No badge. No evidence bag. No hallway full of questions. Only the touch of a man who kept his promise and the dog who carried it when he could not. Dr. Harper enters behind Ghost, her eyes shining in the restrained way of someone trying to remain professional inside a miracle. "The baby is safe," she says. Her mother is being brought upstairs now. Security has everything. Elias closes his eyes, and his breath breaks once, softly, not from pain, but from release. Ghost presses closer, careful of the wires, careful of the bruised places, as if he knows exactly how much weight love should have. Captain Carter stands at the foot of the bed, silent. Nurse Johnson wipes at the corner of one eye and pretends she is checking the monitor. Outside, sunlight spreads over the rain-streaked windows and turns every drop into gold. In that quiet room, the truth no longer feels hidden. It feels protected. It feels alive. The room settles into a rhythm of quiet breaths and subtle movements, each sound amplified by the lingering tension that has finally begun to loosen. Ghost lies partly beside Elias Brooks, one paw resting lightly across the Marine's wrist, eyes half closed yet alert, still scanning the faint shadows along the walls, reading the room with the same precision that had guided him through every uncertain step of the morning. Elias's fingers move slowly, tracing the soft white fur as if reacquainting himself with the presence he had relied on long before this moment, and the touch carries more meaning than words ever could. The infant sleeps soundly in the bassinet nearby, small hands curled beneath the pale blue blanket, chest rising steadily, and the gentle mechanical hum of the monitor underscores the fragile harmony now established. Dr. Anna Harper and Nurse Denise Johnson move quietly around the room, careful not to disturb the balance, while keeping watch on the baby. And Ghost simultaneously. The earlier chaos, the tension of misaligned paperwork, the fear of unseen threats, all seem distant now, tempered by the deliberate calm of the white German shepherd who has not once wavered in vigilance. Ghost shifts slightly, ears flicking at a distant sound, a cart rolling softly down the hallway, but he remains in position, a sentinel of assurance, balancing alertness with the softness of presence. Elias takes a shallow breath, and in that small exhale, the weight of the morning begins to ease. He remembers every detail: the rain-soaked loading dock, the whispered plea of the young mother, the flash drive hidden in plain sight, the small wristband, and the unwavering attention of Ghost. Each memory folds into the present, a mosaic of trust, patience, and the bond that binds human and dog. Captain Raymond Carter stands near the doorway, observing the scene with measured quiet, noting the subtle interactions, the language of loyalty and instinct that surpasses policy, protocol, and procedure. He did what needed to be done, Dr. Harper says softly, almost to herself, watching Ghost tilt his head toward the infant, nose dipping just slightly, reassuring an emotion so small, yet so complete. The sunlight spreads further across the nursery floor, catching the edge of Ghost's coat, creating a halo of white that seems almost symbolic, a silent witness to the outcomes his attention has safeguarded. Elias closes his eyes for a moment, drawing a deep, steadying breath, and leans his head back against the pillow, faint smile forming as he feels the presence beside him, the life saved, the promises kept, and the unspoken communication that spans beyond speech. Ghost shifts once more, resting his chin lightly near Elias's hand while his eyes sweep the room again, confirming that the infant remains undisturbed, that the humans understand, and that the morning's fragile equilibrium is maintained. Nurse Johnson glances toward Dr. Harper and nods slightly, acknowledging that the layers of trust and care they witness today transcend any standard procedure. Dr. Harper straightens, adjusting her scrubs with gentle movements, and allows herself a faint exhale, recognizing that the dog's choices, decisions made on instinct, and unwavering loyalty have delivered resolution and safety without a single word spoken. The infant stirs slightly, small fingers curling and uncurling, and Ghost lowers his ears just enough to relax without abandoning his post, tail tip brushing lightly against the floor in a rhythm that mirrors the steady rise and fall of the baby's chest. Elias shifts one hand beneath the blanket, resting it over Ghost's fur, and the two share a silent acknowledgement of survival, care, and devotion. The hospital lights cast a warm, soft glow now, reflecting off the pale green walls and the polished floor, illuminating every detail without harshness, emphasizing the calm that has settled after the tension of discovery. Outside, the corridor remains empty, the distant hum of ventilation and muted footsteps fading into an almost sacred silence. Ghost rises slightly, stretches with the grace of a guardian aware of his accomplishment, then returns to a watchful recline beside Elias, eyes bright, attentive, and alive with the bond that has guided every careful step of the morning. Captain Carter and the security officers linger near the doorway, respect evident in posture and gaze, recognizing that the events of the morning have concluded not with force, but with fidelity, intuition, and quiet courage. Dr. Harper checks the monitor one last time before moving to the far side of the room, keeping a watchful eye on both infant and dog, aware that some lessons are learned in silence, some protection comes without recognition, and some bonds are stronger than any paper, badge, or authority. Elias closes his eyes again, heart lighter, breathing steadier, as the weight of gratitude and relief settles fully, and Ghost remains beside him, sentinel and companion, embodying vigilance, patience, and the quiet miracle of loyalty kept through instinct, understanding, and unwavering devotion.